In this video, I'm going to psychoanalyze all the mobs in Minecraft. And as you would be right to assume, a task of such magnitude calls for sufficient qualifications, a man of infallible judgment. And so it would seem that what will ensue from my next sentence is your lucky day. For I have self-diagnosed myself with depression on multiple occasions, making me an expert in the field and a perfect fit for the job. I'm gonna go in an alphabetical order, except for the case in which I don't, because I'm the one making the rules. And I'm the smart one. And you should just shut up and watch. Thanks. We start off with the axolotl. Now, the very first thing that I've noticed is that you can't tame it. And now that the multitude of heroes have scrolled down to the comment section to tell me how I'm terribly wrong about the very first thing that I've said in this video, let me explain myself. I'm aware that you can put it in a bucket, but the only difference between putting it in a bucket and not doing so is the achievement that you get for doing so. It still won't follow you around and will still just attack random mobs. Therefore, you can't tame it. Axolotl does count, making it a predator. The problem is that it can't realistically kill anything except for the fish, which, spoiler alert, are the very bottom of the food chain. But that doesn't really define its intelligence. What does define its intelligence is the fact that it attacks mobs much stronger than itself, which initially would seem foolish. But axolotls have one trick up their sleeve. Playing dead.
What is up, baby girl? Did you know that axolotl is a product of two larvae? Fuck it!
Here we can observe an axolotl in its natural habitat, water. Here axolotl's agility is almost unparalleled, granting a great advantage over any aquatic creature. And it strikes. The unsuspecting drowned quickly retaliates, and with its greater size and strength it overpowers the axolotl. Now the tiny predator has to play dead and plan an escape to avoid certain death. But instead, it strikes again and it killed itself. That's why I have to place axolotl in B/average tier. Also, I forgot to mention, after analysis of each mob, I'm gonna put them on a tier list indicating their intelligence because I couldn't think of a better way to put it all together. I imagine quite a few people expected the axolotl to end up a tier higher on the list, and to be honest, I initially put it in big brain tier, but that was before I realized that by playing dead they're only foreshadowing what will happen to them within the next 10 seconds. But I hate this mob. It somehow has less purpose than the average teenage girl while posting on Twitter. It's an F tier. Next up we have the B. I'm assuming quite a few people were anticipating this one because of a certain Dream SMP member, although my guess is that like 30% of his audience, including himself, did not expect to see this early in the video because they've probably managed to forget the order of the alphabet like 3 times they said they would be. Now for the actual analysis. B's whole existence revolves around one thing, and that is to pollute. That's right, they'll steal your candy and throw the wrapper carelessly on the pavement. Wait. To pollinate. Oh, that makes so much more sense. One thing, and that is to pollinate, which doesn't really mean anything outside of them having a purpose. Bees attack only in self-defense, which means that they gotta be hairy and Florida here. Unfortunately, they have terrible survival skills. Despite the fact that they can memorize the location of their hive and travel quite far from it to get the pollen, once their hive has been destroyed, they just start to helplessly wander in hopes of finding a new one. And there would be nothing wrong with that if they didn't just pick a random direction and proceed to fly in a straight line, even if there is a hive nearby. I'm talking like 20 to 30 blocks away. They still choose to wander off into the unknown. Therefore, I have to put B in B tier, ironically, because they have only one unique ability, and it's being myopic. Blaze. What an absolute bitch of a mob. If you don't know the lore of the channel, which you probably don't because I have 5 subs at the time of making this video, worry not, because this canonically does interfere with the Fear cinematic universe. Because I'm not him. Who are you then? Hey, look at me, skank. Didn't I tell you to shut up exactly 3 minutes and 8 seconds ago? Yeah, that's what I thought. The seer. I have bloodshot eyes from doing cocaine. A vast majority of encounters with blazes takes place in a fortress, but unlike wither skeletons, they do not protect it, for they only attack the player, whereas wither skeletons also attack the piglings. From that, I'm going to assume that life of a blaze is completely devoid of any purpose, and most of the things that live just to survive are pretty stupid. Look, partisans are... You know what? I really wanted to insult you here again. And truth be told, I just don't feel like it's right. I'm genuinely glad that you're here. Look, I'm sorry about what I said earlier. I'm still the smart one and you're still the significantly less smart one, but perhaps I shouldn't rub it in so much. So yeah, stupid things like partisans are you. What about the survival instinct? Well, the blaze does avoid the water, which is the thing that kills it, but once in it, it doesn't do anything to save itself. And that metaphorically fits the slang definition of Florida man a little bit too well for me to not put it there. Cats, very much like in real life, act like other dickheads. Oh, it's sat on a chest you wanted to open? Well, what you gonna do? Kill your beloved pet? Yeah, that's what I thought. And so did the cat. Obviously, the cat counts, so it has a clear purpose. Also, it's a pet, so it's already pretty smart. The only thing that sets it apart from a normal IRL cat is the ability to hunt and kill the undead monsters that rule the skies of the overworld.
Like, what the fuck? You can't even make this shit up!
And you know what the best part is? You never get to witness it do it. You just wake up someday next to some disgusting see-through tissue of the undead and you're like, oh, okay, thanks. The only time you get to see it interact with a phantom is when you're about to get attacked by one, and then it's his. The phantom stops and struck. Like, now I don't know if the cat does that because of its affection for you, or because of some other sickening ulterior reason, but it is clear to me that it does not want you to see its full potential. Because if it can dismay the dead just by hissing at them, imagine what it does to them when you're not looking. This is definitely gonna be our first A-tier entry, though it could be higher, but that'll be extrapolating at this point. Cave Spider. The mob attacks you on sight and that's it really. And just from that, it shares like half of personality traits with what you consider your average Florida man. And this is probably as large as this percentage is ever gonna get, considering that you can't do crack in Minecraft. Now we have all the domesticated animals, which consists of chicken, sheep, cow, and mushroom. And they're really fucking stupid, okay? I mean, their intelligence quotient is equal, if not lower, than that of people who stand up to wipe. Also, I forgot about the pig.
Hey man, is it about the video? I mean, I'm sure we can come to some kind of arrangement. I really didn't mean it. I really did not mean it. It was just for a video. It was just for a video. Come on, man.
Cod, salmon, and tropical fish. Remember what I said about domesticated animals? That is, before I get stabbed in a parallel dimension? Yeah, those animals look like geniuses compared to their underwater counterparts. Except obviously for the pig, which looks like a genius compared to every sentient being to ever exist. Please don't hurt me. So like, all those domesticated animals are like at least smart enough to extinguish themselves. Fish on the other hand, absolute bottom of the food chain. They literally die to fucking magma blocks. To inanimate blocks! If fish IRL eat plankton, the plankton would eat fish if it was actually ever implemented in Minecraft. It's an F tier. Now for Minecraft's most iconic mob, a piece of moss. Or not, tiny brain, me blow up people. Lore? Based on all the evidence provided, I deem Creeper to be at most as smart as plant and at least as smart as a follower of Islam. Which on a serial level, both are more complex than a Protestant, so it's gonna be a tier higher. I mean, at least they can climb ladders.
Oh my god, we're actually back to psychoanalyzing. Thank you, Dolphin. I was running out of things to offend.
Alright, started off, dolphins understand the concept of gratitude. For giving them a fish, they show you the nearest chest. You know what, after saying it out loud, it sounds more like a concept of capitalism. And now that I'm thinking about it, I really struggle to tell the difference between the two. Dolphins also have an idea of, I quote, fun. And I quote that because they're really just picking up trash and letting go of it somewhere else. You fool. My main problem with dolphins is that like any survival instinct whatsoever. I mean, they do try to stay away from guardians, but if you hit a dolphin, just kinda takes it. It'd be an A tier if it trademarks intellect, not his king, so it's gonna be a B tier. Horse, donkey, and mule. They're basically those mobs, but they have an idea of belonging, so C tier. Guardian and Elder Guardian. I'm gonna analyze them as one mob because really the only difference between them is that one has an ability to redefine prisoner's dilemma from what it normally is to should I punch 8 blocks of obsidian with mining fatigue or just kill myself. The most apparent thing when one encounters the Guardian for the first time is that it protects the ocean monument. You can never spot them in the wild on their own, they always have this one clear-cut purpose. Guardians also have one ability that is almost exclusive to them, the ability to kite. They're very clearly smart enough to acknowledge their main strength, build their strategy around it, and capitalize on it. Guardians make a wonderful use of their range and my god, they're so fucking annoying! See you in hell. Now, the great boss of Minecraft, the Ender Dragon. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Why does the dragon attack us, but not the Enderman? I mean, it doesn't know their intentions, it doesn't know if they're malevolent or not, and so we could probably just call it a day here and say that it's another one of those brain-dead, bloodthirsty mobs. But that's exactly where I step in. You see, to understand the reason behind one's intentions, you need an explanation of some sort. That explanation will usually come from the one whose intentions you examine, in that case, that be the dragon itself. Obviously, that information is not obtained in blast, but we can gather all the clues, scattered throughout the realm in which it exists. And usually, you can find a city, and that city, a moored ship, floating in thin air. And at its peak, seaward head of a dragon. I think it's fair to make a conjecture here that there was some ancient civilization, whether it was the builders or something else, that was hunting dragons. And so from that, we actually get an information that the dragon is in fact smart enough to learn from the mistakes of others. or is it? You see, when examining the movement and the combat maneuvers, it became quite apparent to me that the dragon lacks any kind of creative thinking. I mean, it just repeats the same 3 moves throughout the entire duration of combat. And that made me aware of something. Where the hell did the healing crystals come from? Because last time I checked, there were no healing rejuvenation floaty crystals anywhere else. And so with that remark, I think I can draw the final conclusion. The dragon's fucking stupid. Not only hasn't been spurred by the ancient civilization, they also had to create special healing crystals for it because they didn't deem it capable of surviving on its own. But I suppose it has more attacks than a cave spider, so I'ma put it at tier higher. Now the time has come for me to talk about the only mob that can actually talk. The Enderman. It's also the only mob that can interact with its surroundings in a non-destructive manner. The Endermen are passive towards every mob in the game except for the Endermites for whatever reason, but more importantly, they're also passive towards the player, that is, unless provoked. By provoked, I mean if you hit them or make eye contact with them, they will get very upset. Damn. The second half of that sentence sums up my interactions with women concerningly well. Anyway, I give Enderman a B tier. I just can't give anything higher to a mob that appears to be completely devoid of any reason. Also, what the hell are Endermites? Are they like Ender lice that hatch themselves inside their dark turquoise That is so fucking gross. No, fuck that. Fuck, I'm not ranking that. I'm just not I refuse, okay? Get this out of my fucking tier list. I never want to be reminded of that spot ever again. Just give me the next mob. Next mob! Evoker, hey. Alright, just give me a second. Evoker, and all the illagers for that matter, are an immensely interesting bunch of mobs. But the Evoker just kinda stands out, and I think most of the people will agree with me on that. So, let's start with the least obvious. They're hostile towards you. That seems pretty obvious to me. Shut up. We talked about this. See, we actually get a backstory within the Minecraft lore that explains why they're hostile towards villagers, not necessarily towards you as a player. The villagers have been banished from society for the unethical and disturbing experiments on life and death. That at least partially explains their animosity. But then, the villagers as a whole create their own community. They establish complex logistics consisting of recon and military outposts, and they actively research the unanswered and unexplained mysteries of this world. And the Evoker plays a great role in all of that. I mean, we literally see him bring things to existence just to hurt us, whether it's creating matter or summoning malevolent apparitions. The Evoker has mastered the most mysterious and unsettling power the world of Minecraft has ever seen, and my guess is that he didn't do so by chance. This is gonna be our first S tier entry. Next up we have the Fox. The wild foxes are a very basic mob. They hunt to stay alive. But there are 2 things that really differentiate them from other non-hostile mobs. The first one is the bond between the small foxes and the grown-up ones. They don't just leave their helpless offspring, they actually somewhat care. They can also pick up items, though they don't put too much thought in choosing what they pick up, and it's usually food, but they can pretty much use every item in the game. Still fairly basic, that is, until you take into consideration a behavior of a tamed fox. To get a tamed fox though, you first need to have the fox trust you, and you build said trust in a very strange way. So, first you find 2 foxes, you make them horny, wait for them to conceive an infant, kill the parents, kidnap the child, and here we go, the fox trusts you. You can also just kidnap the fox without killing the parents. Now, this fox will throw itself at any mob that hits you, which is questionable, but it does show that it has an idea of what belonging is. Or it's desperately trying to kill itself while defying the Bible so it can finally enter the paradise and escape all the horrible trauma it has experienced in its childhood. Either way, it's gonna be an A-tier. Ghasts and Husks. They literally just attack you, nothing more. I can't even judge them based on survival instinct or something like that because they don't die to the environment. Also, I didn't put these together because they had this one thing in common. I just thought that fire falling from the sky and brainless husks were too good of a metaphor for Florida. Squid, I'm completely blindly, okay? They're fucking retarded. Like, I'm pretty sure more squids have suffocated in Minecraft than there were casualties in both world wars. Like, the number has to be absolutely baffling. Like, I feel bad for putting it in an F tier because presidents are genuinely smarter. They're genuinely smart. Like, they don't just die. Like, it's below F tier. It's below F tier, okay? It's below F tier. Goats are pretty much the embodiment of Florida. I mean, they're like every other brainless mob, but sometimes they're just kind of aggressive and destructive towards everyone and everything in the vicinity, you know, just kind of wacky like that. Alright, let's cut the bullshit. I don't want to promote alcoholism on my channel, so if you have laughed or will have laughed at a Florida-related joke, go text your crush, I guess. And if you don't have a crush or your crush is your boyfriend or girlfriend, close your browser, go outside and contemplate on whether disappointment to your parents. How about that? Yeah, that sounds good, right? And you wanna know why I'm a disappointment to my parents? Because I can't even fucking come up with a fun interactive activity for a viewer to follow through a fucking Minecraft video. That's why I'm also on 5 subs and fucking long. Metaphorical meaning, am I right? No, for real, who the fuck was that? Hoglings are indubitably stupid. They're hostile for no reason, they're pretty low on the food chain, and the list just goes on. But let's focus on positives for a second. They do feel pain, and they try to avoid it, but it never comes to anything more than trying because this stupid infant just attack you and have a sharp 5 netherite sword in your hand. But they also avoid portals, which is actually pretty smart considering that going through one would instantly lead to their demise. As for the negatives, a stupid blue shroom is enough to strike the fear of God into their hearts. I mean, I personally been on shrooms for the past 5 months and experienced no negative side effects. It's again gonna be a D tier from me. The Iron Golem. A mob with a very clear-cut purpose. To protect the villagers. What it does lack is the basic understanding of the world, knowledge of economics, society, or survival. It's been created with one purpose in mind, and one purpose only. But whether its intelligence is artificial or not, it is still smart enough to make an exception for creepers on its very long list of mobs to hit. And so based on the fact that they have a purpose, and they avoid collateral damage while fulfilling their task, I'm gonna give the Iron Golem a B tier. So, Llama is basically an IRL mule minus the feudal system justice. It's basically a movable chest with an idea of belonging, much like a horse. So I'm gonna put it in the same tier because last time I checked, carrying chest instead of people doesn't require higher intelligence quotient. Magma Cube.
Oh no.
Here? What's going on?
Are you alright?
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's fine. He committed suicide.
Yeah, that's an F tier for me. Ocelot stalks its prey moving close to the ground. Its body so steady that it's almost impossible for an unwary eye to detect its movement. If it's patient enough, it will be rewarded with a meal that will grant it survival. If it's prey within the reach, it gets ready to strike. Bruh, just killed an infant. Next up we have the panda, and just saying that probably causes your brain to recall a memory of something like this. And if it didn't, no, it forever will. And if you just thought to yourself, no it will not, then I've already succeeded in manipulating you because you're actively thinking about it. Anyway, based on seeing a panda somersault to its demise, most people would probably assume that they're pretty dumb. But did you know that pandas can actually have multiple personalities? And I think that it's only fair to judge them up if you have all the available pieces of information, so why don't we take a look at them? We have the white TikTok girl panda, the Ur Southwest alcoholic father panda, the rumble while playing horror games panda, the Ethan Nestor panda, the Ur Southwest alcoholic father when he's outside panda, the anti-vax panda, and the I can't make that joke without it possibly backfiring in the future TikTok girl panda. So averaging those out would be roughly dumb. Now we have the parrot, a very iconic mob widely recognized in the world of Minecraft for its unique ability that allows it to perch on the player's shoulder. For a mob that ultimately lacks any purpose, just like many other domesticated animals, it has a lot going for it. First of all, it has an idea of belonging, but unlike horses, foxes, or axolotls, it's true belonging. It's not just trust, it's that mutual bond that you can establish with an actual pet. Parrots can also dance and imitate sounds, but I don't think that scores them any IQ points. Based on that, I'd give Parrot a B tier because ultimately it's just a glorified chicken which you can put on your shoulder. But unfortunately, I can't do that due to a certain deal breaker that I've yet to mention. They eat poison, so it's gonna be a D tier because, get it? Florida, again, they eat crack, I mean... The next mob was by far the most difficult mob to analyze, but let me explain to you why. Wait, what do you mean was? Have you been lying to us all this time? At the start of the video you said, I'm going to, and now you're saying it like you've already done it. To answer your question, yeah, I've been lying to you. I've also just successfully broken the fourth wall and my moral backbone at the same time. Now, back to the explanation on why this mob turned out to be such a challenge. You see, this mob is just full of logical fallacies. First thing is that it's called a phantom. How fucking curious when it's literally dealing physical damage! Secondly, every single undead mob except for the phantom and the wither has a living counterpart. Zombies and skeletons, you/thief/the ancient civilization, zombie piglin, and obviously the wither, unlike the phantom, is artificial, so it literally can't have a living counterpart. And thirdly is that it's scared of cats. Now, I know that I said that we don't have a complete grasp of whatever the fuck this 6-pixel white motherfucker is doing at night, but in the context of the undead it's quite weird, for all the other undead mobs are utterly fearless. And sure, you can make an argument that whatever the phantom was before it became undead was naturally below the cat in the food chain, but that argument fails because what I like to call the analyzation process strips the mob not only of its personality, like in the case of piglings who are turned from ruthless warriors into indifferent husks, but also from basic survival instincts, like zombies that just sink to the bottom of the reservoir instead of gasping for air. The only thing that doesn't contradict with any other mob is the thing that they don't share with any other mob, that is, hunting the player. And sure, it might not be as intense as Minecraft Manhunt, but it's still rather interesting. You see, phantoms appear only after the player doesn't sleep for 3 days in a row, and considering the fact that nothing canonically just appears, I'm gonna assume that the phantoms tracking you down is related to your lack of sleep, which puts you in a delirious state. This begs the question, are the phantoms even real? And the answer to that is yeah, because the multiplayer exists. So we know that phantoms can track people in poor mental condition. Does it help me deduce intelligence quotient? Absolutely not. But considering that it's scared of predators, and like zoglings for example, I'm gonna put it a tier higher than all the previous undead mobs. Now the time has come for me to talk about the rulers of the underworld, the piglings. And I've purposefully used plural here, for they make up a commune. For the descendants of a pig, I find it quite fitting that they can speak at least 2 languages fluently, first one being violence, and the other one being money. Of course you want the goddamn bell, how could you not? Piglings are also brilliant hunters, not only because they're basically top of the food chain until they come across a speedrunner, but also because they have exceptional both spatial and situational awareness, being the only mob in the game that can actually keep track of the environment. I'm referring to them not as the player break, something of theirs. All this already puts the pigling pretty high up on the tier list, but there are 2 more things that really elevate it to another level. First one being the scarce and almost lost in the annals of time ability to open doors, and second one being absolutely breaking it down while bathing in the blood of their enemies. Unfortunately, I can't put the piglet in S tier. There's just nothing particularly outstanding about it, like, you know, the ability to control life and death, so it's gonna be an A tier just shy of S. Now we have the Walmart version of the piglin brute. There's really no point in psychoanalyzing them because it's literally just a harder hitting, stripped of both fear and personality piglin. So let me just list all the differences and things that the brutes lack in comparison to the piglins. They're not scared of zombie piglins, Gold means to them about as much as your hot takes on Twitter to anyone else on the internet, they don't hunt, and they do not break it down while bathing in the blood of their enemies. It's actually kinda hard to judge them considering that we can't really measure their situational awareness, because if they see an enemy, they're just gonna kill them, and there's really nothing stopping them from doing so. But I don't really see a reason for their situational awareness to be inferior to that of a pigling, so I'm just gonna assume that they act differently given the same amount of information. And going back to the whole fearless thing, it is very clear why the piglings would fear the zombified version of themselves, but at the same time, no harm has ever come to them from the hands of their undead counterparts. So if anything, the pigling brutes have the smarter approach here. Although neither of them is afraid of the portal, which can't take their life away in a matter of seconds. I'm putting the pigling brute in B tier because ultimately they still have a sense of community and a clear purpose, which is protecting their home.
Yeah. Would you look at that, it's back to back to back. Hustle monster, don't give a fuck, cause time is all they got at struck. Like I struck a head when I was 11, ever since then I got fucking brain damage.
I was running and I failed to see a metal scaffolding that was on my head level.
Now for your basic illagers, the Pillager and the Vindicator. Let me start with all the things they have in common. They pillage, they participate in patrols, although those guys just kinda join the patrol if they're nearby and usually are not a part of one. They celebrate while standing in the streams of their enemy's blood, and they aid each other if attacked. So now for the stuff they do not share. If they're not a part of a patrol, the Vindicator will attack you on sight, whereas Pillager will not unless you give him a reason to, which is getting too close or shooting him. Vindicators can also open doors, Pillagers cannot, and for the last thing, which isn't really a difference, just something that I've noticed that makes the Pillager indubitably dumber than their melee counterpart. They only load their crossbow while on the range of the target. I cannot emphasize enough how moronic that is. It's as if someone came to rob a bank, put a box of 5.56 on the counter, and started loading their magazine. I'm actually so upset by this mechanic. Anyway, obviously everything that I've said about society while talking about the Evoker still applies here, so it's gonna be a B tier for the Vindicator and a C tier for the Pillager. Polar bears and foxes are in a bit of a faction war. How it works is that if there's a fox in the vicinity, there's no fox in the vicinity. What did the fox do, you might ask? I approve of that question. To answer it, it was in the vicinity. Now, I might have painted bears in a bad light, so let me tell you what they're really about. You see, bears are not hostile towards the player. But if you hit one bear and there are more nearby, or there is a baby bear nearby...
I don't have friends, I got family.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a C tier. It's a really bad survival mechanism to remind me of my favorite childhood franchise, its eventual downfall, and the death of my favorite actor. I use games as an outlet for my anger. Now we have the pufferfish, the smartest fish in the game, but that achievement is comparable to walking to a newborn nursery and calling yourself the smartest in the room. Not very impressive. Actually, now I'm curious, is a pufferfish smarter than a baby? Cause like, if I had a pufferfish, I can't really do anything, but if I had a baby, it's just... Anyway, let's get back to the analysis. It still does magma blocks, but it does have a really good defense mechanism, and it's using it most of the time in a very competent way. Which is really good to see, considering that it's the most potent psychotropic substance in the entirety of Minecraft and it's incredibly sought after. But I said most of the time for a reason, and it's because it gets startled by an armor stance. I mean, getting inflated doesn't really have any drawbacks, but it's still pretty stupid nonetheless. It's very clearly smarter than a regular fish. I just can't give anything higher than a D tier to a mob that dies to a block. Ravager, the dumbest illager. Or maybe I should say, the dumbest villager.
But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory.
Anyhow, whatever the Ravager is, it is pretty stupid. But it is smart enough to not attack its allies slash owners? Yeah, no, I should just stop thinking about that. It's a D tier. Shulker, the guardian of the End City. It's got a quite a lofty sound to it, doesn't it? So it should be a formidable foe, but reality is often disappointing. Oh no! It seems like my weapons can't penetrate its shell! Let me just do nothing for 3 seconds. I'm still gonna put them in C tier because they do have a purpose, but clearly not much more than that. Silverfish, probably one of the most annoying mobs in the game. I think in everyone's mind there's that simplification that an endermite is just a rare silverfish, therefore they should be in the same tier. But the very same thing that makes the silverfish annoying is what makes them superior to the endermites. You hit one and there's suddenly 3 new ones. Now, I wouldn't go as far as to say that there's a sense of community here, but there's something present. Whether it's a strategy or something like that. Doesn't really matter because it makes them a greater threat than the endermites, so it's gonna be a C tier. Now for the bane of every unexperienced Minecraft player. Skeletons and strays. After looking into the behavior of those mobs, I have to say that what I found is really disturbing. So, let me present to you what I've discovered. Skeletons are the only undead mob that hides from the sun, which means that they have to be sentient. That's nothing new. We've already established that phantoms are most likely sentient because they experience fear. But the phantom doesn't hide during the daytime. And I think I figured out why. The answer was in one of Minecraft's first mobs all along. You see, every living sentient mob avoids damage. A cow will not walk into a pool of lava, a horse will not stay on a cactus. So why does a phantom, which is higher up on the tier list, not avoid the damage that the sun inflicts to it? Am I stupid? No. And don't you dare to ever question my intellect again. I am omniscient. I see it all. The phantoms don't avoid the sun because they don't realize that they're undead. They exist as if they were still alive, that's why they fear, that's why they can't foresee their demise. And so for a skeleton, to take shelter from the sun means to realize that they're undead. And that's just scratching the surface. Have you ever paid attention to a skeleton getting chased by a wolf? It retaliates only after it's been bitten. Now, picture this. You're walking through a forest, and out of the lush vegetation emerges a silhouette of a wolf, much larger than any dog you've ever seen. What's the first thing you do? You either freeze, or you start to slowly back away. And what if the wolf starts to run in your direction? You don't fight, you start running as well. And only once it's caught up to you, and there is no other option, you strike back. Just like the skeleton. A thing that doesn't have a single vital organ, acts human. And its combat is also suspicious. Not only does it realize that it needs space and builds distance to maximize the advantage that comes from wielding a ranged weapon, but will also keep the bow drawn if the target sees its range, ready to take a shot whenever the opportunity arises. Now, it'll hold it just for a moment, but still, the pillager won't even have his crossbow loaded. But despite all that, I can't give the skeleton more than a B tier. It lacks purpose and will still fight with other mobs, but this is as high as it gets for a purposeless mob. Whereas the skeleton was quite smart, the skeleton horse is just completely brain dead. So it's gonna be an F tier. Slime. No, not that one, more like this one, except green. I mean, it's literally the same mob, the only difference is that there are less cliffs to fall off of. F tier. Snow Golem, very much like a blaze, avoids the thing that hurt it. Fire, water, etc. And just like a blaze, it does absolutely nothing to save itself from dying. And just like a blaze, it doesn't take advantage of its range. The only difference is that one of them attacks the bad guys and the other one attacks the player. So just like the blaze, it is going into the D tier. Spiders. I don't know what makes these gigantic 1.2 meter monstrosities think that they can attack me when it's dark and then just be completely chill during the daytime. Do they expect me to forget that I've just been attacked by a ginormous red-eyed spider? Because if that's the actual train of thought going through their heads, they're not very smart. Also, I've seen one too many spiders do that to give them anything higher than an F tier. Next up, we've got a very ugly bipedal pig. You guessed it right, the Strider. Now, the two are not quite the same. Yes, they both just a card on a stick, or a shroom, I suppose. And they both lack purpose, but Striders have something unique about them, which it shares with about 50% of both real and imaginary girlfriends. And that thing is getting cold. It also shares one trait with you, most likely, which is taking damage from water. Anyway, Strider will try to get warm if there is lava nearby, but will not step out of the water. Which means that our hedonistic fucks that intentionally malformize their existence by self-inflicting pain and deserve to go to hell, but in our case, it's Florida. Contrary to popular belief, turtles are actually the dumbest passive mob that is not a squid. Not only do they not run away after taking damage, they also just straight up turn the other direction if set ablaze, even if they're currently facing the water. Although I gotta say, I can't really get mad because at the end of the day, they do eat plastic bugs IRL, so it's pretty accurate. Turtle gets an F tier. Now we've got the Vex, and I have to admit this one was quite a conundrum. It has proven to be quite difficult to find the line between Vex's will and the control of the Evoker, but I came to a conclusion that the Vex follows orders unless they're attacked by something, in which case they'll defy Evoker's commands and retaliate instead. That puts them on par with spiders and zombies in that department, which brings me to a conclusion that they're malevolent beings that thrive on agony of others. And to be honest, you can't really blame them. I mean, I'd probably end up the same if I was conceived by some weird dude that shoots spiral G's out of his hands. D tier. Now time for the villagers. Holy shit, how long is that page? It's like twice the length of Wikipedia page on thermodynamics, and I'm not even counting the achievements or the patch changes, what the fuck? I sincerely apologize, but I've been a follower of empiricism for about 10 seconds now, and it'd be against my personal beliefs to read that article. So, go choke on a lemon or something. Villagers, the society that prevailed thanks to an ICU. Don't get me wrong, they're quite advanced on their own. They can produce tools, furniture, they have jobs, social interactions, or at least they pretend to have them to make us feel bad and leave so that we stop exploiting them for monetary gain. But they would just go extinct if it wasn't for the protection of the iron golems, which are not created by them, so no argument can be made that they've adjusted to the situation. And frankly, I've seen through them, through the lies and deception, and I've been bestowed by the knowledge that they're nothing more than cowards and capitalism-abusing scoundrels. But like every other of that kind, they're susceptible to gaslighting and conquered by fear. Oh hey, you woke up. I was a little worried. You were a zombie, but I cured you. What's that? As a token of your gratitude, you'll give me a discount? Thank you, I'm honored, but if I were you, I'd keep the prices down for me, outside the influences of the market, because who knows? One day, it could happen again, and you don't want to make me second guess myself when it comes to curing you, do you? Sassy boy. Now I've got a close relative of the villager, the wandering trader. What really makes this mob stand out is not his custom woven cashmere clothing or the fact that he's flexing his wealth by leading his llamas everywhere with him. It's that dichotomy that only becomes apparent after a closer examination. They are not the same. Villagers work to live their life. This guy, he doesn't work. His work is his life. He refuses to be restrained by the foul shackles of stinky society. He chose to be free. And sure, his traits aren't always the best, but he knows that somewhere there's that one rich and complacent asshole who will pay any sum for a small drip leaf or a slime ball. And let's not overlook the fact that he's actually figured out a way to survive during the nighttime, unlike those dimwits. I'm putting the wandering trader in S tier, and I know that there is some trader haters out there because he's annoying, but he's made a conscious decision to escape the shadow of the ancient builders and figured out a way to become self-sufficient and shape his own destiny instead of relying on a relic of the past. Next up, we have a very confusing mob, the Witch, and let me explain why. You see, not in a raid, these two are chilling, but in a raid? Oh, you're screwed, sassy boy. Also, they can make potions but can't open doors, it's really strange. But hey, at least they're not this guy. Oh, you're upset? Because no one even remembers that you're in the game ever since Dream got at speedrun on 1.14? Crazy. It's almost as if you haven't made a single potion, despite your workplace being a fucking brew stand. Where do you even get the pearls from? And what do you do with the potions? I can hear you brew something. What is it? What kind of sick illegal underground operation are you running? Sorry about that. Sometimes I get carried away. Where were we? Oh, right. Considering that alchemy is incredibly rare and you can get paid a full wage just for pretending to do it, it's gonna be an A tier. I didn't want to give the same speech about community for the 5th time, so I skipped that part. Now we have the dumbest boss in Minecraft, which is actually still pretty far from the dumbest mob. And to be honest, I have no idea why I mentioned that, considering that there are only 2. Anyway, we're talking about the Wither, and frankly, there is not much to ruminate on. It's just no, that's a stretch, a being filled with malice, whose only goal is to destroy all life in existence. So basically Lich from Adventure Time, except I can put it in a missionary position and thrust my sword into it until the white stuff comes out. Wow, that sounded really wrong. How do I recover that? I got it. Officer, I swear it was dead before I did all that. Nailed it. Anyway, it's gonna be a D tier. Now for a very uncanny and quite a tragic mob, the Wither Skeleton. Just like the skeleton, the wither skeleton has acknowledged that it's dead, and just like a skeleton, it is terrified of wolves. I personally find this interaction quite stupid. It makes sense for normal skeletons because they're quite fragile and use a ranged weapon, but when it comes to those huge, cursed with life-decaying properties wither skeletons, I find it to be rather dumb. Now for the stuff that is unique to wither skeletons. Most notably, their animosity is not exclusive to the player, they're also hostile towards piglings. On the first glance, it might not make a lot of sense. After all, they're both hostile towards you, just like any other mob in the nether outside of Striders. But obviously, for a specialist like myself, it's quite easy to see through the motives of those horrible animated piles of charred bones. Just like the player, the piglings are recognized as a sentient species, and mobs like hoglings or zombified piglings are not. But why would that make a difference? Because of that. A photo of a drawing of a skeleton? No, right here. Patrol. Wither skeletons are the guardians of the fortress, so they ignore mobs which are not going to rob the fortress of its resources. And that also proves that blazes are just residents of the fortress, because they do not share the animosity towards piglings. The wither skeleton is a remnant of the ancient builders. It's actually made of the very same bones as them, but the mind has been mostly lost, except for that feeling of belonging to the place they once called home. It's an 8 year. Next up, we have man's best friend. That is, until he dies in the most unpredictable way imaginable and leaves you inconsolable for days. You guessed it right, it's the domesticated wolf. Unfortunately, the wolf in Minecraft is a really underwhelming companion. It feels like every pet in the game one-ups its real-life counterpart in at least one way. Parts dance, cuts strike fear into the rotten hearts of the undead, etc. But the wolf? I can't even imagine what a wolf would do to a person if it was actually trained to kill. Like, police dogs are already terrifying, and they're both smaller and not going for the kill. But in Minecraft, the wolf gets owned by a single zombie. And you see, it'd be fine if the wolf was attacking mobs in order to protect its owner. Except it's the owner that has to protect its beloved pet, because the wolf has a very difficult time understanding that its power level is similar to that of a very angry chihuahua. But let's actually get into psychoanalysis. I feel like there's some serious disruption in the brain of a tamed wolf, considering that it will literally just die instead of running away. It also gets distracted by animated bones really easily, which is probably our best indication of wolf's intelligence quotient. Like sure, it can establish a bond with a player and kinda has idea of community when it comes to living in a pack, but it is still visibly dumber than a cat, so it's gonna be a B tier. Next up we have the Zogling, and let me just be blunt here, this is hands down the dumbest mob in the game, like nothing even comes close. This mob is completely indifferent to everything in its vicinity except for everything that it considers to be animated. Why did I use such a specific terminology? Because it's stupid. Like really fucking stupid. It attacks armor stands because it thinks that they're alive. F tier. Next up we have the zombie. There is really not much to say about the mob, it just really likes to munch on flesh. Unlike the skeleton, it is completely unaware of anything, especially when it comes to combusting, as it just completely fails to notice any sort of correlation between catching on fire while standing in the sun and not doing so well in the shade. It's an F tier. Now we go back in the alphabet all the way to the letter D, the drowned. Omitting the fact that it's two completely different areas that the two occupy, drowned and zombies are basically the same mob with two exceptions. The drowned can throw, and they will not just walk in the sand to meet their doom. And considering that throwing things was crucial in the evolutionary process, I'm gonna give drowned a D tier. Now for the last mob, the zombified pigling, or some of the OGs call them the pigmen. The mob is completely stolid unless provoked, but once it's agitated, every single pigman will become very upset with you. Clearly there's some sort of community or something like that. Not much more though, considering that there are no signs of sentience or purpose. Therefore, I'm concluding this session by putting the zombified pigling in the C tier. What do you mean concluded? You haven't even touched on baby variants of each mob. Baby villagers, baby zombie... Hey, I said concluded. That's it. Bye. And don't ever question me again. Hey, who the fuck are you?